ReZero, Side Story, Anastasia Rising in Life Memorial Day, Chapter 1.
Kicking the pieces of wood laying in that back alley, Ricardo cursed his own bad luck in finding the child that had appeared in front of him. He had been sitting down, at the end of a dead-end street still wet from rain, about to eat the pastry he had just bought, when a problem appeared, ready to torment him. Ricardo, the one facing Ricardo in silence, was a human child, dirty from head to toe. Her light purple-colored hair was untidy and unkempt, and worn clothes that looked like shabby tags. Her hostile gaze revealed a lack of trust in humanity, which meant she certainly was an orphan from the poorest area of the city. It is not uncommon to find children without any parents. The rich are very rich, and the poor are very poor. It's a universal rule, and the same is true in Kararagai, where commerce is flourishing. Ricardo, what do you want, brat? I just finished working and I'm hungry. I don't want trouble, ? You little shit. Where the fuck did you go? Suddenly, a yell reached Ricardo's ears, having taken the initiative to try and not be disturbed. In the end, he let out a sigh from his oversized mouth. ? Oh. I found you, kid. What's up with you? Huh? Who the hell are you? Four hoodlums, with a brown-skinned man as their leader, rushed into that dead-end street. The man's face twisted in anger when he first spotted the child, and raised his voice even louder once he saw Ricardo. But that rage quickly faded once Ricardo got up. Ricardo, why are you so pale? What's the matter now, leader, that size? What damn kind of demi-human are you? Ricardo, can't you see I'm a dogman? A kobold, leader, there's no such thing as kobolds with bodies like that. You're bullshitting me. As the brown man shouted, Ricardo made a frown, blocking his ears. Ricardo had already lost track of how many times he had heard that spiel, that sort of indignation. In truth, even though he towered at nearly 2 meters tall, his whole body was covered in brown fur, and his distinctively dog-like facial features left no doubts on whether he was a canine demi-human, even though he had to admit he was one of the absolute tallest units of among dog people. Ricardo, oh no, Brotter. I don't want to stand in your way. In truth, this brat jumped in while I was eating. I was the one that was bothered here. Saying this with sternness, it had been enough to make the ruffians look like they had been intimidated by him. Snorting inwards at his lack of guts, Ricardo then tried to leave that place to avoid any further headaches. Ricardo, at the very last moment, he took a quick glance at the child as he left the alley. He had no way of knowing what she had done. But judging from how fired up the crooks were, she was probably not going to get away from them unscathed. Ricardo wasn't one for feeling sorry for others. However, looking at those pale blue irises so careless, greatly changed Ricardo's fate. Leader, anyway, come on. At least you're coming with me. Ricardo, wait a second, brother. The leader of the group grabbed the child's shoulder, and tried to drag her petite body out of that place. The moment that child showed a sign of desperate resistance, however, Ricardo interrupted. In the narrow alleyway, the brown-skinned man was agitated by Ricardo's gigantic frame and backed up. Before he could open his mouth, Ricardo seized the child's head and hid her behind his back. ? Leader, hey, what are you doing? Ricardo, you're holding a collar in your hand, aren't ya? That's the kinda collar you put on a slave. Pointing to the man's hand, he snapped back with a calm voice. That hand was gripping a collar connected to an iron chain, and the ruffians sharpened their gaze in response, and they finally noticed. The towering demi-human also had the same kind of collar around his neck. Leader, you dog, on your neck, that's a slave's. Ricardo, don't get me wrong. No, my slave contract already ran out. The stone symbolizing the contract ain't shining, see? I've done my time. I just keep wearing this so I would not forget those days. But my personal history doesn't matter, what you guys are doing does. While listening to Ricardo's story, the men had reached into their pockets. Sniffing the changing atmosphere, Ricardo pointed towards the child with his chin and continued, Ricardo, I wouldn't have stuck my big nose if the kid already had that collar round her neck, but I'm worried now that she has yet to use it. It ain't something that can be taken off without a contract, and it ain't right to make that kinda deal in a dark alley like this. Besides, leader, besides what, goddammit, Ricardo, your people ain't talking with Carraragian dialect. Where's the shit flowing from, then? Immediately after Ricardo laughed heartily, revealing his fangs, the brown man in front of him moved. Throwing the collar to the side, he drew a dagger with the other, free hand. In one continuous, flowing maneuver, the glowing tip of the dagger glints near Ricardo's thick neck for a sharp blow. Just before that, Ricardo, ho-ho, an amateur, the large machete that was propped up against the wall was swung, and the man's neck was snapped well before he could attack. The man's head, struck by that iron slab, turned the whole way around, and his body slammed into the wall and collapsed. Looking at that scene, the other three were paralyzed, shocked at their partner's tragic end. Ricardo, correction. All of you are amateurs and very stupid. The machete flashed a total of 3 times. Conversely, the number of men that stopped moving was exactly 3 times as well. That was all that was needed to draw the curtain on the quarrel that had just taken place in that alley, and, after stashing the corpses away to a corner, the monster of a kobold turned around. The child was still there, standing, without running away. She was looking at the remains of those men, unafraid but with the same kind of hostility that she had shown previously, just like the one she showed before she nearly was enslaved. It was not weakness, it was pure, undiluted rebellious spirit, a look that awakened some interest in Ricardo. Ricardo, hey, kid. Well, I'll be damned, ? He scratched his head not knowing what to say, when he finally noticed the warmth held in his hand again. It was the pastry he had just bought and was planning on savoring before this had ever happened. Ricardo, do you want some of this pastry? It's still warm, ? I do. Then, the child quickly took the pastry from Ricardo's hand, at the same time her stomach growled, which got a chuckle out of the demi-human. Then, the kid started with an and, squinting, ? I'm no brat, I'm a girl. Don't you call me that again, Ochin, and she threw a grudgeful look at Ricardo, the kind not even those slave merchants had been dealt.
Chapter 2.
Ricardo, however, man, things have gotten dangerous as of late. I didn't think they would have swooped as low as to enslave little children as well. The name and philosophy of the Carraragai city-state are cryin'. As he left that alley before more trouble emerged, Ricardo let out his internal thoughts with a grumble. By his side, stood the little girl eating that confection, which was most certainly going to be devoured entirely. He couldn't blame her at all. Ricardo, it's not shameful to be dirty. You got plenty of spirit. Being captured by that gang of nitwits is quite the blunder, though. How did you get caught, lil' girl? Girl, 'twas nothing, keep your nose out o' it, Ochin. The girl who had just finished eating curses, now walking on a busy street. Seeing as the child had gotten annoyed at that question, the kobold laughed once again, making her frown even more. Girl, and why did you help me, Ochin? You know I can't pay it back, Ricardo, even I don't know. It wasn't exactly by chance. He tried to dodge that question as he scratched his head roughly. The girl didn't seem to like that answer, but Ricardo was saying the truth, and couldn't really explain his reasoning, unfortunately for her. Maybe it had been her light blue eyes. Girl, and as the kobold reflected on his motivations, the child let out a short gasp. In the direction she was looking to, 2 silhouettes were dashing towards her. 2 fox demi-humans, probably brothers, breathing heavily, running up to her and, Fox bro, thankfully, you're safe. You were taken in our stead. What sort of thing may have happened? Girl, shut up. I don't know what you're talking about, you must be confusing me with someone else. Fox bro, of course not. How would I be mistaken about my benefactor? The fox demi-human persisted, while the girl continued indifferent, acting unapproachable. Girl, I have no idea what you're talking about, but don't ever enter alleyways like that one out of curiosity. There are others like them hanging around. They seem to think capturing demi-humans ain't a problem. Fox bro, that, girl, I don't want to get involved with that anymore. Get out of here, go home, and cry with your mama. I won't say it again. With a hurtful look at the cold girl's words, the Beastmen brothers went away resigned. After they had gone away far enough, the girl then turned to Ricardo, who had been watching them with his arms folded. Only then did the child notice that Ricardo was looking at her with his arms crossed. Girl, what's with that face? Ricardo, nothing. Ochin just found out something that has nothing to do with him. Girl, you're annoying. Ricardo patted the girl's head, who did not like it one bit and swatted his large hands away. That little event left the kobold in a very good mood. After confirming those brothers were gone, he turned to her. Ricardo, is that okay? You're aware you nearly became a slave for helping them? Girl, yeah. It was something I did 'cause I wanted to. Besides, if their family finds out they were involved with an orphan in a very poor town, they'll be in trouble. This is best for them and for me. Ricardo, you're real mature for your age, aren't ya? Sorry, but I don't hate it, lil girl. Girl, I don't like you much, though. The girl reacted to that with a murmur and a pout. Ricardo reacted with a hearty laugh, tilting his head, and the girl then pointed at his neck. Girl, that collar is proof you were once a slave. Why are you still wearing it even after your contract is up? Ricardo, didn't you hear? It's so I can never forget. I can't forget my past as a slave. I am who I am today 'cause I was once a slave. Girl, that's ridiculous. It's the same as shackling yourself. After hearing Ricardo's quiet justification, the glint that the girl had shown in that alleyway returned to her eyes. Their light glared him straight on. The kobold nearly forgot to breathe. Girl, you sound like those people from the poorest part of town. You've been slaves for so long, you've got a loser's mentality stuck in you. It made you a coward. They're just excuses for why you didn't make it, and so you can say you're a lil better now. Ricardo, lil girl, that way of thinking is what's wrong. You're better now. Absolutely not. Now's the worst moment of all, because you are standing still, not doing a thing. I don't want to be like that. Saying that with a shaky voice, the girl was shedding tears non-stop. Despite having nearly been captured by slave merchants, despite having seen a brutal murder in front of her, she had not cried, yet now she cried for an uncertain future. It was as if she could not forgive herself for being nothing but being a hollow, orphan child, and continued to cry as she leered to the collar worn by Ricardo. Ricardo, yeah. I hate the worst too. Saying those words, he patted the little girl's head as she wept and looked at the sky, to steel himself to do what he felt was the right thing to do.
Chapter 3.
Ricardo, yes, now, you look presentable, girl. After having her hair done, which she wanted to let grow, washing her mud-dirtied body, and changing her ragged clothes into new, beautiful ones, she actually seemed like a decent girl. However, at Ricardo's remark, she looked at her appearance, and with restless gestures, Girl, what is this? Why do I gotta dress like this? Ricardo, I've already arranged everything. Because you're gonna start working hard at a bar. You wouldn't be able to work at all dirty like that. Girl, work? This suddenly? Ricardo, don't you wanna change from being the worst possible? Then, you can't just say it, you have to work like you meant it. Besides, what's your name? I need it so I can give it to the owner. The girl was confused with this barrage of new information and stuttered before replying to the question posed by Ricardo. In the end, after a good while, she looked away while pouting, and, I have no name. But I grew up in a hole in the ground, so people call me Anastasia. Ricardo, ha ha ha. That's great. That's a great name. Anastasia, from the hole in the ground, huh? I'm sure you're gonna be a big girl with that name. Then, pushing the back of the blushing girl, the two left the inn and entered the busy street. Amid the crowd, Anastasia closed her eyes as if looking towards something extremely bright. Ricardo showed his fangs to that Anastasia, and continued, Ricardo, look here, lil girl. This is the first and last time I'm helping ya. I don't know what to do next. If you truly are determined, then this will go all right. Anastasia, why are you doing so much for me, Ochin? The look the girl exhibited was one of heavy doubt and mistrust. For Ricardo, it was actually a relief that was her reaction, instead of a word of thanks. Ricardo, nothing but whimsy. But I think it's gonna pay off, if you ask me, he replied as he stroked the girl's head, punctuating his statement with a loud laugh. Once washed, her hair was thin and soft, as if representing her gentle heart. Even the fact it was slightly wavy reflected her stubborn nature. Ricardo, I hope you make it big soon. When you do, I will be proud if you remember me. Anastasia, Ochan. Ricardo, called by a whispering voice. Ricardo waited for the continuation that never came. But the girl started running to the other side of the street, where she turned on her heels, and yelled back, Anastasia, today I'm gonna take advantage of your kindness. But don't you forget. When I make it big, the first thing I'ma do is buy ya. I'll take off that slave collar with my own hands. Ricardo's finger touched the collar unwillingly, unconsciously. Feeling its cold, hard sensation on his finger, the images of having been once bound by it flashed by. Regardless, he swallowed the memories of the days he thought it was an abomination and smiled. Ricardo, I am Ricardo. I'll never forget what you're sayin', Anna Bo. A girl whose cheeks were swollen in a pout, and the demi-human who laughed loudly in amusement. That was how the woman who would one day be in charge in the biggest merchant company in the country, and her first collaborator, once met.